Hello, everyone. How are you? Hello, Imke. Thank you very much for joining. Hello.
Hi.
Are you okay? We're not now live and etc. So I'll just be started. I was laughing at a tweet that Jeff just wrote about my picture. It says it looks like I have head lice, which is actually a very good point. I've got this picture where I'm kind of scratching my head like that. It looks like I'm thoughtful, but Jeff pointed out actually looks like I have head lice. I'm saying that's actually a fair point. You've now ruined that photograph for me. Oh man! But anyway, thank you for joining on this lovely. This is, I think, the first. Is it the first all German episode we've had? I think it might be actually.
Cool. We can switch to German then.
Absolutely. Why not? We'll just do it all. We'll just Deutsch it up tonight, right? Just to confuse people.
Exactly.
Just for people who may somehow not know you and not know what you do, maybe you could give us a bit of a background about what you do and who you are and all that kind of stuff. That would be cool.
Yeah. So I'm Imke Feldmann. I'm the blogger behind the website thebeaccountant.com. And if you have working with Power Query a bit you might have come across my site. I'm also have been very active in previous years, I would say, in the forums, helping people with Power Query stuff. So you might have come across me there as well. In my previous life, I have been working in several finance positions. So I basically converted from finance manager or finance people to helping finance people building up business intelligence solutions, primarily with Power BI or modern Excel, I would say. Yeah. So that's what
Yes.
I'm doing.
I think it's understated where you say if you've worked with Power or work with M, you might have seen my blogs. I think, yes, that's basically if you've worked with Power Query and had any single question, you would have come across your work. You know, one of those first names when it comes to Power Query, when it comes to M, and yeah, which is
Yeah,
always very helpful.
yeah, I started very early with being active there. I mean, I started my blog in 2015, and
Oh, wow.
before that, I've been active in the community. So I'm a really early adopter of the Power Query technology, and
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
just it just adds up if you start early. Yeah.
I can imagine. As an
Mm.
early adopter, does it like frustrate you, therefore, when you see situations when people are very much underusing or completely not utilizing Power Query when they use Excel? Is this something that you still notice, or?
Yes, I mean, I noticed that, and I must say that, of course, I find it very regrettable and, but, honestly, when I've been working in finance,
Mm,
I wasn't up with all the latest technologies, I must
mm,
admit. So
of course, yeah.
if you have your daily jobs and a lot of tasks to do,
Mm,
it's always not so easy to develop new skills and try out
yeah,
new tasks. At least when I started, I mean, I started my career very, very early, and there
yeah,
you didn't have the option to, like you have now with the internet, to get to
true.
know all the newest technologies and so on. Maybe today would be a bit easier, but if you
I mean, that's what I find interesting, though. It's not just the fact that not being expert or not learning about it. It's the number of people who actually don't even know that it even exists. And sometimes I look at Excel,
mm,
and obviously just purely Excel now, not Power BI. If I look at Excel, I sometimes wonder, is that somehow maybe the fault of Microsoft a little bit? Because it is a little bit hidden. There's no like huge, here is Power Query, it is awesome, use it. It's kind of like data, and then it's not really. I'm not sure. This is just a question, really, because I'm curious.
yeah, good point. I think there's some room for improvement to make it more prominent.
Mm,
Um, I don't know why that is. I mean, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think with Power BI at the end, it comes more to the folks' awareness,
Yeah.
and then sometimes people are quite surprised when they hear, "Oh, I can use that in Excel as well." So I didn't
Right.
know
Right.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Mm,
So there's a question from Jeff.
mm.
Did I read somewhere that Power Query was your first use of programming in any major way? True or false?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
yeah, yeah.
That's interesting.
So that's the only language I really I'm really familiar with. So
Okay.
basically, when a problem comes around, I will always try to solve it with Power Query.
It's a very reasonable thing to go to as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was working closely with my colleagues this week, and I've been taking a lot of data from this API,
Mm.
and which is I love working with API data. I think it's really enjoyable. I could get to
Yeah.
do a lot of Power Query work and stuff. And then came to the
Mm.
point where normally what we do is I'll do Power Query work, and then it comes to the point where we put it into a data warehouse, and the data engineer or someone will step in and then take what I've done and then do with SQL, basically. Yeah. So then I've taught my boss, and then having trying to read through someone's, wouldn't say massively complex, but for me, yes, massively complex SQL, because I have to be very, very honest about the fact that my SQL is pretty basic.
Mhm.
Because I try, I like you obviously, but to a much lesser level. I try to just do everything with Power Query because
Mm.
it's what I know, and yeah, it's for me it's quite a nice thing to do.
Mhm.
Let's bring
Yeah.
Jeff's getting involved here. I think it's the fault of the users, Ben. Never mind querying. How many? Yeah, I don't know actually.
Yeah.
It's tr- it's a good point, I suppose. I mean, I'll be honest, I've never had an issue with someone not knowing how to create a pivot table or a pivot table. I never know how to pronounce that pivot table.
Mm.
Um, But yeah, I think yeah, I'll be honest, I must admit, I do think it's a shared responsibility, because it's weird the number of people who literally just don't know it, who have never used it, and when you guide them to it, they're like, oh wow, this is crazy. With a pivot table, I'm not sure. I must admit that I've never actually. I don't enjoy using Power Pivot at all. I'm not sure for this. I think I haven't used Power Pivot in quite a long time, but I just don't think that's a particularly enjoyable experience, I got to say.
No, if you're used to Power BI, so that's
Yeah.
yeah.
I think also because I also started in Power Query, and then I went very quickly though from Power Query. I think it was Power Query, and then about 2 months later was the Power BI. Yeah,
Mm.
so it was really
Okay,
like
yeah.
laying the groundwork, because I was
2000
working one of yeah.
in 2015 then.
Oh no, it wasn't that long ago. It was just the fact that it was then someone told me about it. So I think
Oh,
it
okay,
was
yeah,
2000. Actually, it wasn't long ago. It was probably end of 2016 with Power Query, and then the start of 2017 with Power BI. So I was like, oh,
yeah.
you think Power Query is really cool? Check out this Power BI thing. It's like the next thing. So have a look at it. I was like, okay, I can play with that a little bit. It's all right. It's all right.
Mm. Yeah, I actually started with DAX. So Rob Colley's blog post
Of course.
or blog actually um, was an eye opener for me, and
Hmm.
there I think I discovered that in around 2012. Um,
Hmm.
2012, I started following his blog,
Hmm.
and then I saw what Microsoft was about to
Hmm.
do around in the self-service area. That
Hmm.
was before Power Query. And so actually started with DAX in the modern Excel and with
Hmm.
Power Pivot at that time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so this
Yeah.
was my entry point. But I still find DAX much more complicated than Power Query, I
Yeah.
must admit.
Yeah, actually,
So,
I was doing a Power BI training today in German. Actually, I've done a Power BI training in German for a long time.
wow, well
Uh,
done.
yeah, thank you very much. And this is why I switched my Power BI to German, and this is why I sent a couple of tweets about learning German words in the Power BI. And one of the things that I found really difficult to say was "verwendete Schritte," so the applied steps.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
was like, okay, what's it? Verwendete Schritte. It was
yeah.
trying my best to make it roll off the tongue, but I got there.
Mm,
But yes, in this training, I was saying that explaining about. I mean, it's only 3 hour training, so not a lot at all. Saying that for me, it's much easier to follow the logic of M than it is of Power Query. I think it just somehow of DAX. Sorry,
mm.
if I write in it, I feel like when I'm writing in M, I'm kind of like writing in sentences. If this, then else. It's kind of has more like somehow a rhythm to it. But when I get to DAX, it just seems like chaos that I grapple to understand on a daily basis.
It really, I
Yeah.
mean, M is sequential and it doesn't have this traps and
Hmm.
double. How do you the doppelten Boden? I don't know how you translate that into English. Doppelter Boden. So where
Oh
you
yeah. Okay. No
yeah
trouble. Yeah.
many yeah
I don't know these adverts he's talking about, Jeff. Remember the compact computer ads with John Cleese many decades? I don't. I'm sorry,
what?
Jeff. Said
Uh,
maybe MS need a short video segment using a well-known slacking off in Excel. Remember the compact computer ads with John Cleese many decades ago?
no, I don't
I
remember
don't.
that.
Maybe
No.
they just aired in New Zealand. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think I'm that much younger than you. To be honest, Jeff, I'm 39, so I don't unfortunately fall into this young person category anymore. It's been a while since I did. There you go. Here's a question we'll go for. How much of the Power Query is covered by the data transformation Power Query editor? Do the transforms available in the menu items only just scratch the surface? Oh, that's a decent question. Yeah.
Yes, they do, unfortunately. And that's why I'm really a big promoter about. Oh, I should promote it more. But my biggest wish for Power Query was that they would give us the ability to create custom ribbons. So in Excel we can create custom ribbons where we put buttons and menu items on
True.
there to make the to make much more functionality of what the language can actually do available to users for clicky, draggy, droppy, basically. So because M is the language behind Power Query, and it's much more capable of to do things like we can nowadays do through the current user interface. And it would be so great if we could, the community or whoever wants to contribute, could add custom ribbons where we could make the additional functionality available through a UI that you can use with your mouse. So what I did for couple of times, and I always write more custom functions. So if I see certain moves that make sense or replicate functions that we have in Excel that are not yet available in Power Query, I create a custom function, put it on my GitHub repo, and use it in my library, or share it on my blog post, depending on how valuable I think it is for the public. But although it is fairly straightforward, or let's say doable, you copy a bit of code and then you create a custom function in your Power Query that you can use. I can very well understand that many folks find that a bit intimidating or think that it takes them too much time if they only do that occasionally, for example. So what would be really great if we could basically create our own custom ribbons where we could place functions in a way that makes sense to use through a user interface. So yeah.
That's a really cool idea. I never thought about that, but that would be awesome. Do you have an idea on that?
Yeah, I have an idea on that. I should post the link. Yeah.
Please do so. I will immediately vote for that because I've never seen that. I don't often troll the
I've
ideas
posted
thread.
it on Twitter a couple of times, but yeah.
I apologize for having missed that every single time. But no, that would be awesome. I never thought about that because it's right. Why is that flexibility not there in Power Query when it's there in Excel? It's a great idea. Wow. Can you give us some examples of what you can do over and above the clicky menus? Oh, we're going deep into it today. If you can be bothered, Imke.
What? Say again, please.
Can you give us some examples of what you can do over and above the clicky menus? Like an example thereof.
Over and above.
Like what more can you do without just doing the click function at the buttons? Like what is there that exists that?
Okay. What should exist in my eyes? So what would I place there? Or
Yeah, I think so.
yeah.
That's what they're going for.
So basically, for example, some functions like let me see.
Sorry, I put you on the spot there, MK. I do apologize.
No, that's what we are here for. I just had problems understanding the question. Let me just.
Yeah, go for it. It's all good. We're here for you, you know.
Can I share my screen or?
I believe there should be a button to share your screen.
Yeah.
I think if you go to, there's like a share screen button. You go for it. I have one. I think you have one as well.
Let me just see whether I can find what I'm searching for.
We're going to screen share now. We're really taking it up a level. This is fantastic. We've never done a screen share yet. Actually, I've never done one because I'm always scared of my computer crashing because I have serious issues with this. So I think probably safer on your side, to be honest.
Okay, let me just share screen. Okay, there we go. Do you see something?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see my blog?
I believe so. Yes, we see.
Can you see? So here's a blog post, for example, where I shared a function that allows you to unpivot a table that has multiple rows in the header and columns. So the idea, usually you have to do a couple of steps to do such a task. And I provided a function that allows you just to type in the number of rows and columns you want to keep and unpivot the rest of it. But to do that, it's fairly old. So you even have to, now you have to download it, a function code from my site, then put it into your editor and things like that, and then do
Okay.
all the stuff. So functions like that
Mm.
I think would be convenient to use for users, just to have them in the user interface
Mm.
would be a good thing in my eyes. So yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, anything that makes it easier to do more complex actions would always be a benefit. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice example, I have to say.
Hmm.
Can I throw another question up while we're here? I'm going to put the chat overlay back on.
As
We
much
have,
as you like, of course.
in which scenarios do you recommend the use of the table dot buffer function?
Okay. Um, so every time you need to basically cut the so-called streaming semantics in Power Query. Yeah, I will explain in a minute. And if you are using the sort functionality. So if you are sorting a table or a list, then you have to use a table buffer if you want that sort order to be maintained. And I assume that that's basically what you would
Okay.
like to have. If you use a sort, you
Yeah.
want the sort order to be maintained.
Mm.
And so a function like sort requires the table buffer to work as intended. Sometimes for some time the random number generations also require that.
Okay.
And sometimes you have to use it for performance purposes. For example, if you use a function like list generate or list accumulate, then this will often mean that you are iterating through an array or multiple items. And if you don't use the table buffer in that instance, that means that this element that you're referencing multiple times will be evaluated multiple times. And that can basically, in most cases, make these functions unusable, because when you apply it to real data, you will see that the performance will drop immensely. So for occasions where you have to stop re-evaluation of items in a row context, I would say row context, then you have to use a table buffer. What a table buffer doesn't do is stopping re-evaluating so-called staging tables. So I don't know if you've done things like that. Sometimes you import a table and want to use that in two different queries as well. So you basically split your query logic and reference this staging table and build one query on it and another query as well. In that case, a buffer wouldn't work. Why? Don't ask me why, but it is like that. But if you're using commands in an iterator, in a table add columns or in a list generate functions, so in functions that are really iterators by their nature, then the table buffer will basically stop the re-evaluation of the input. And then it really makes sense to use it to improve the performance.
Wow. That is a very, very thorough answer.
Okay.
Impressive, I gotta say. I'm impressed by anyone who can go into that level of detail just like off the cuff, just go straight into it. It's a fantastic thing. It's really interesting to listen to, I gotta say. Do you ever, like, with the length of time you've been working with Power Query or Power BI, how often do you discover like new things in Power Query, or do you feel like you're at the point now it's like, okay, I've discovered new things so rarely because, or almost never because I've got such extensive knowledge of it. I'm curious about that.
Mm.
I mean, how often do you come across something that you just go like, yeah, I can't
In
do that?
my daily work, I would say I don't come across new things.
Hmm.
If I go to Twitter and see what Ben Gribaudo is posting, then
Okay.
I know that there's a lot
Okay.
about the M language that I
Hmm.
don't know yet. So Ben Gribaudo, he really does a great job
Okay.
in digging into going
Hmm.
into the weeds of the M language, I would say.
Okay.
But actually, in my daily work, I
Hmm.
haven't come across this, and unfortunately, currently, I don't have the time
Yeah. Hmm.
uh, to to go into that as well. So,
Hmm.
in my spare time, when I'm doing community work, I rather work on my tools and on finance-related stuff
Hmm.
than going down and exploring more of the M language.
Yeah. Do you miss it? I mean, it's a shame to get at the point where you kind of don't feel challenged, but maybe at the same time it's a good thing because you're at that level where you can just do it. But I'm not sure if it's
Yeah, honestly, I'm quite pragmatic about it. I'm happy that I can use my time to improve my DAX and to learn more about Power Automate and Power
okay. Yeah.
Apps, things like
Uh,
that. There's so much to learn in other areas, so
hmm.
I'm happy that I have time to learn the other things as well, I must
Nice.
admit.
That makes
Yeah,
sense for sure.
yeah.
I think of all the things that start with the word power, the ones that I neglect the most is most definitely Power Apps.
Mm,
I love Power Automate. Don't get the chance
yeah,
to use as much as that, but I think it's just phenomenal. But Power Apps, actually, I tell you, the only thing I've ever used Power Apps for is before they had this integration of Power Automate within Power BI. I used it to build like buttons, and then I would put that button from the Power App within Power BI, and I was like, there you go, I have a
yeah,
Power App now. Does that count? Do I now know Power Apps? But then
yeah.
along came the Power Automate integration. I was like, yeah, okay, don't even need that anymore.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think yeah, I mean, yeah. Of course, the time is limiting factor, and
Mm,
in terms of customer work, at least for me,
mm,
the license fees have been also a limiting factor because the interesting data sources require a pro license.
yeah.
And I mean, they did a good job in lowering the rates from about 40 to 20 US
Mm,
dollar, I think. But
yeah.
currently, I don't have a customer that
That's fair.
uses this. So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, one day maybe. When it's time's
yeah,
always the issue for sure. It's always nice to come across a new project and someone tells you a requirement and it automatically just get this idea in your head. Aha, I've never done this before, but I think if I use this tool, because then you
yeah.
know this learning curve is coming, and it's always an enjoyable experience for sure.
Yeah. I saw that you've found the time to play around with Deneb a bit.
Yes.
I'm really envious about it because that sound looks so great to me. I wish I had some
Mm,
time to play around with it as well. So
yeah, it's really good. I'm
yeah.
enjoying it immensely. I'm frustrated by it because of the things that
Why?
the things that I can't do that I want to do as part of the learning thing, right? Where do you know
Okay.
when you kind of you do the whole peaks and troughs thing, and yeah, at
Mm,
a point where you're really trying to achieve. And actually, I haven't had a chance to do anything the past week, but when there's something very specific you want to do, and for whatever reason you can't make it work, it's so frustrating.
yeah.
Um, I think I mentioned last week I was currently working on maps, and I need to contact Kerry about it so she can help me because she's very kind that way. But no, Deneb is very very cool, and the chance to understand and learn a bit of Vega Lite, which I did not even know existed 6
Yeah.
months ago. So no, that's really cool. I'm going to pull up a question from Jeff again. What functionality is most missing from Power BI UI in your opinion?
Yeah.
I missed the last part of the question, and I should have known where that was leading.
I would extend it to be measure driven everything. And that's the thing I love about Deneb because in Deneb the concept is that you can drive everything by your data. And I think that everything in Power BI should be able to be driven by data
Yeah,
measures and everything. It's really that's how things should be in my eyes.
Yeah, completely. I'm sure Jeff will strenuously agree with what you just said there.
Yeah,
Yeah, measure-driven everything.
yeah,
There you go. Change all of Jeff's tickets from measure-driven data labels just to measure-driven everything, and then you'll get there.
yeah,
There are a couple of
exactly.
things that I are missing that I don't
Okay.
understand. Measure-driven everything. Is it really? I didn't notice that.
Cool.
Measure-driven.
I would call it data-driven, but measure-driven, I can live with that as well.
Oh
Yeah,
man, that's
no,
fantastic. Measure-driven
yeah,
everything is my favorite name. Fantastic. See, your kindred spirit there.
yeah,
Oh man. No, one of the things I've been waiting for ages. It's a really small thing. One of my favorite German words, by the way, is Kleinigkeit. Because I know
yeah.
I know it's a Kleinigkeit. I know it's a small thing, but
Mhm.
it's the ability to conditional format the background color of a page. I know it's a small thing. I know a lot of people don't care about it, but I really do, and I don't understand why I can't have a page where the actual color of the page itself can be driven by a measure. It's strange because there are so many things you can do with color, but with
Mm.
it's just really. I mean, I'm sure at some point it will just appear, and it won't even be on on the update this month list because it's not even a big deal at all. And I'm the only one sitting there caring about about it. But yeah, it'd be cool just to certainly if
Mm.
you have even if you have like stuff like a tooltip page or a quick tip page, to have that color of that quick tip controlled by a measure would be really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, yeah. My friendly Twitter name is. I'm just going to pull Jeff out. I'm just going to focus so much on Jeff today. Jeff, measure driven, everything. Oh, yeah, fantastic. I've seen. Oh, really? Have you now? That would make sense. To be honest, my workaround wasn't really a workaround. It was simply getting a really big shape, like a rectangle, and putting that on the back of the page, sending it to the back, and then of course the shape, the background can be the color of the shape. So that was my very, very ugly workaround. But if there's a proper workaround that doesn't involve using shapes, that would be fantastic, and I'll give that a search. Thank you very much, Jeff, because that does annoy me. I made a video about changing the color of your entire like report based on like a slicer. So to switch between like a light and a dark modus, which I know is again a little bit silliness, but it is quite good fun and cool, which I think describes about 95% of the videos that I make. But I couldn't. It was just this one part, and I hate the part where I had to say in the video. So now you have to get a shape, and you have to make the shape the background of your page, because I know that's such an ugly solution to put a big like rectangle at the back of your page. But what are you gonna do? Nah, yeah. One sec. Excuse me. Very dry
No
mouth
problem.
today. So yeah. Do you like when you're working for whomever, like working clients or you do your job and stuff? Do you like are you working like? I'm just curious as to, are you working like in a team? Because you say you're working like you try to solve everything with Power Query, but do you
No,
take everything? Do you take everything from like the A to the Z of the report? Like actually do like complete report creation, or do you focus on parts thereof or whatever?
no. Usually, with my clients, I start to convince them that they should build the visuals, and
Fair. Yeah.
I would usually do the data preparation and the model
Mm,
building and the measures and so on.
mm,
So I'm working as a freelancer basically for clients, and of course, visual creation is takes a lot of time. And
yeah.
of course, if they want to save some money and want to make best use, uh, yeah, because I
Yeah.
think many of them they want to maintain the solutions by themselves, but they
Mm,
need me for a kickstart or to
mm,
get into
mm,
the into the technique. And then I said, well, should start trying to create the visuals because that's where you can save a lot of money at the end, and it doesn't require
fair point.
so many technical knowledge. So it's basically more or less, yeah,
Mm,
learning the user interface and now deep learn technical knowledge about theoretical concepts are necessary.
mm,
And then if they want to move into things further, they can. Always recommend to look into Power Query.
mm, mm.
And the last thing I recommend to take on themselves is the DAX thing.
Okay.
And depending on how much money they have in the budget and how much time and how much they want to be involved themselves, we are ending somewhere on that range. But my
Makes sense.
recommendation is for the customers,
Hmm.
Visuals, Power Query, DAX. So that's the order
Makes sense.
I recommend for them.
It's so honest of you as well, trying to save your clients some money. How nice. I wanted, Jeff just mentioned something. I wasn't sure if he was referring to what I wanted to ask about next. Your Power BI cleaner tool. I think I haven't mentioned that yet. I'm not sure if that's what Jeff was talking about when he asked about your Power BI Fields Finder. If Jeff said, don't forget to ask about the Power BI Fields Finder, but he likes to keep me on track. He likes to make sure I don't get too diverted by random questions, does Jeff. I want to ask about the Power BI Cleaner tool, because this is a fantastic tool, by the way. This is
I
also
use it often.
this is something that you developed, right?
Yes, I've developed that. And that's what I mean with I'm always using Power Query for everything, because I mean that's a tool that many people would have written in C# or something like that, because you could have a nice user interface and clean lookup and so on. And if I knew any of these languages, I would have used these languages and provided a nice program me looking thing. But I only know M, so I have to use Power Query for my tools, basically. So you have to use them in Power BI or Excel or whatever.
I mean, it's a fantastic thing, just right when the game changer. Can you just maybe explain a little bit precisely what it is? Because it's better coming from you than me. I mean, I know what it is, but from your mouth, what is the Power BI
The cleaner?
cleaner? Yeah.
So the Power BI cleaner is basically a Power BI workbook or an Excel workbook that allow you to identify the fields that are not used in a certain Power BI file or not used in a shared file, a Power BI dataset that you've published into the service and is used by many thin clients or many reports, or even analysis services models that you're sharing and that are referenced by reports in the Power BI service. So all these scenarios are covered with my tools, that my tool will tell you which fields are used anywhere and which fields therefore are not used and could be deleted or at least hidden. So you can use it to basically clean up your solutions.
Yeah. Very cool thing. I love it. I used it once or twice, and it is such a great idea, because the I think also in your blog you have also a post about steps to tidying things, making queries faster, that sort of thing. And kind of for me kind of falls in the same category of just not taking what you don't need, which seems like a really obvious thing to say, like don't take data that you don't need, don't take data that's not being used, but it sounds really difficult to identify precisely what. And to have this tool is so helpful.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, in my practice, I mean, if you're developing things in an agile way with basically with the business departments and not with the IT department, they say, well, we are dragging fields from these and these tables. You tend to import everything at first and look at them and try to find out how things relate to each other, and then build up your measures. And if you then see, well, this is actually what I'm ended up with and what I really need from all the data that's there, then that's the point where you clean up your stuff. And for these cases, I find that really, really useful, I must say. Yeah.
And I think this process of and I say this because I'm something that I very much do myself, and it's a very, very poor best practice. It's not a poor best practice, just poor practice. I say, okay, I'll take the data and I'll take pretty much what I think I need, but of course there's always more stuff in there, and I'll take it and then I'll start to develop the report, and then I'll just kind of forget about that part, forget about the going back and actually let's just clean this up, because you get so focused on the driving stuff forward and the creating measures and understanding the business needs that you no longer need is just completely forgotten. This is something that I do. I know I do it. So yeah, it's cool, even just to have it as a reminder, to be honest. This is actually a good point by Jeff. It's crazy that Microsoft don't have the where use functionality built in the Power BI, yeah. It's a reasonable point.
Yeah.
But it gave you something very cool. If Microsoft had it, you wouldn't have had the chance to build that very cool thing. There you go.
Oh, I have so many other things on my list that I could have built, so I'm not.
They're just enabling the community, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, but no, it's a right. But actually, to be able to see not just what's actually in the report, but also use an analysis services as well. To be honest, I didn't know it did that until right now, until you said that. I'll have to be quite honest. So I'll have to maybe implement
No
that a
worries.
bit more than I usually do, and keep things nice and clean. Keep those refreshers, etc., nice and clean. You know.
But I mean, it has also some limitations, and what is really problematic is custom visuals, for example. So you really have to extract the logic and find basically the positions in the JSONs, more or less, where the relevant fields are. And
Okay.
if Jeff and I will be successful in our cry for more data and measure-driven everything, this will become even more difficult because we will have many, many more locations where informations about usage will be placed in the visuals. So yeah, I really hope that Microsoft will come up with the documentation about all these structures that makes it more easy to identify all these elements.
For sure. I think I need to utilize Microsoft documentation a lot more than I do, to be quite honest. I discover far too many things on Twitter. I'm not sure that's a good thing and a bad thing, because I'm like, oh, I read a tweet about that. I'll go and try it, and completely ignoring the fact that there's a whole page of documentation about this subject. Now, yeah, I'll just click on some things and see what it does and see what I can make it do. And yeah, the documentation is always a good idea. My God. Yeah, cool. And what about you? Just about you in general. You said before. I'm just curious now, because we're talking about before we started talking living in Germany, etc. Because this is the first ever all German. I thought you were still in Berlin. I thought this. I was excited. This is going to be the first ever purely Berlin web chat. But you're
Yeah.
up on you're up on the north coast now, or something like that. Is
On
that
the
correct?
Baltic coast. On the
On the
Baltic
Baltic
coast.
coast. I
Yeah.
apologize. Baltic coast.
So
Nice. Okay.
just a couple of hours drive from Berlin.
Oh God. I'm from the northeast of England, so I crave cold, windy weather. To be honest, I love. I'm from
Really?
the city I'm from is called Newcastle, but I'm from a small town on the coast called Whitley Bay, and we're kind of famous for a lighthouse. And that's kind of pretty much about it. It's a nice lighthouse. Don't get me wrong. Really strangely, actually, I was in a dinner place in Berlin, and there was a picture on the wall, and I was like, that's the lighthouse from the town that I grew up. I was like, this is St. Mary's Lighthouse. It's called St. Mary's Lighthouse. So I
Oh,
was like,
looks nice.
I asked the guy, he was like, how, just curious, where did you get this picture on the wall? Because this is like from this small town in which I live. He said, oh yeah, I was at like a flea market, and I had his pictures there, and I liked it. And I was like, that's pretty cool. There you go. Somehow in Berlin, my adopted home, there is a picture of the lighthouse from my small town of my actual home.
Yeah.
Quite strange.
Yeah.
Yeah. A place where I want wind, cold wind and rain. Cold wind and rain. A friend of mine actually is also, she moved back. I think she was from Welton as well. She moved back. She was living in Berlin for good 10 years, and she's from New Zealand, and she's just went back to Wellington now. It does seem like a very nice, maybe one day when I'm allowed to fly again and have the chance to make it all the way. I've been to Australia once, but I did not go to New Zealand to
Oh,
go
I've
somewhere.
been
Yeah.
never been down there.
No,
Neither Australia nor New Zealand.
I
Oh, that
loved
really
Australia.
would be nice.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Sorry, please. Sorry, Imke.
No, that would be really nice to be able to visit these places
For sure.
one time.
I am. I have issue with it, the heat of Berlin. That's just a really humid heat in the summer, you know. And in Australia, when I was in Melbourne, the heat, it was hot, but it was different. It was kind of like, you know, when like I remember in the summer, I walked out of the office, which of course had air conditioning, and I opened the door, and it kind of felt like, do you know, when you're cooking in the oven and you open the oven door and you forget to put your head back, and all this like heat from the oven just like explodes in your face. That's kind of what it felt like when I was opening my door into my office in Melbourne. It was intense. So yeah, I think maybe that area plus a little bit of it would be great to see Ben. And yes, it would be fantastic.
Yes.
It would be fun. We wouldn't say no. We would. I'm sure. I don't want to speak for Imke, but I think it would be nice to go. You know. Oh man. Oh, see, this is what it's about. They don't go inside the pub in Newcastle unless it's freezing the end of the beer. We're also known in Newcastle for never wearing coats. I'm not sure where this came from. It's a really strange thing. Like, but to me, it always made sense. You'd stand in the queue to go into a club, and you'd have to in the winter, and you'd be standing wearing your shirt or your t-shirt and no coats. So somehow people from Newcastle got famous for not wearing coats. And I think it's because maybe we're a little bit impatient, because I always hated it when you had to go into a bar or a club and you had to like put your coat in like this cloakroom place. It's just more queuing. So for some reason, we became a city with no one wearing coats. Oh God, Jeff, how could you say such a thing? I could do live. Well, I can do my live chats from anywhere in the world. Really, to be fair, I'm strictly online for that sort of thing. But yes, what to do. Anyway, I will not ramble on too much because I know it upsets Jeff when I ramble on. He likes to keep me on track. I will say thank you for joining. It's been awesome to hear you talk at length and in depth about things in M that I might understand in a few years. I didn't know. I have to remember because I didn't know about. Please remind me, what was it that you were talking about when you're using a sort? You have to use this function, otherwise it doesn't maintain the sort.
The table buffer.
Table buffer. I will use that. I didn't know about it, so I've learned something. This is fantastic. I like to learn something. So table buffer, I'll remember that. And for everyone who joined in the chat, it was fantastic. It's always good fun to have all these questions, and it's always much appreciated. And back next Thursday, for sure, unless someone in my house gets corona again. But Imke, thank you very much. It was really good fun.
Thanks a lot for having me, Ben. Yeah,
my pleasure, our pleasure. And goodbye, everyone. Thank you, and have a lovely rest of the day.